Hello and welcome or welcome back. My name is Claire, I'm the creator behind 53 Stitches, and today we're going to be making this super cute little coaster. It's great for drinks or for decoration around your house, and it's perfect for beginners. So luckily, a nice short list of materials that we need today. I have some DK weight mercerized cotton yarn. This particular one is Drops Muskat in the color 30. And we've also got a 3mm crochet hook or a size 5, a pair of scissors, a yarn needle for finishing the coaster off at the end, and I've got 2 stitch markers here so that we can show you the correct place to start and finish your rounds. This coaster starts with a magic circle, which can be quite a tricky technique for a beginner to learn. We're just going to go through it slowly. Feel free to rewatch this part as often as you need to. So you've got the tail end of your yarn, and then the working yarn is what is still attached to the ball. We're going to wrap that yarn around our finger once, twice, and then pull it over and then join it here at your ring finger and just pinch that in place with your thumb. Then you want to insert your crochet hook underneath that first loop, the second loop, and then grab that third length of yarn, pull it under both of those loops, grab that working yarn again, and then pull it through the loop that we have on our hook. Now you can take this magic circle off your finger and just pull that working yarn to tighten it in place. This is technically our magic ring complete, so we have these 2 little loops that we'll pull on later to close the circle and the tail end of the yarn over here. And we've got 1 loop on our crochet hook at the moment. And so to start the first round, we're just going to chain 2. So to chain, you want to yarn over, so wrap the yarn over the crochet hook and use the little hook at the end just to pull it through the loop that's sitting on the hook. So that's 1 chain, and then we do it again to complete a second chain. So we're going to work 14 double crochets into this magic circle to start our coaster. And to do a double crochet, the first step is to yarn over, and then insert your crochet hook into that big circle, yarn over again, draw it through, and you'll see that we now have 3 loops on our crochet hook. You want to yarn over and draw through 2 of those loops. We now have 2 loops on our crochet hook, yarn over again, and draw through those remaining 2 loops, and that is your first double crochet completed. Now it can be a bit tricky to find your stitches when you're first starting, so we're actually just going to pull that up there, and we're going to add a stitch marker to mark our first double crochet. So you can see here we've got these 3 V shapes. The top one is our first stitch that we've just completed, so insert your stitch marker underneath both loops of that stitch to help us find it later. Those other 2 V's are from that chain that we did at the start. Now you can put your crochet hook back on put the loop back on your crochet hook and pull that working yarn to tighten it. And then we're going to continue doing the other 13 double crochets that start our round. So again, yarn over, insert your crochet hook, yarn over again, and pull up loop, yarn over, draw through 2 of those loops, yarn over again, and draw through the final 2. So that's our second double crochet. Let's do the third. Yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull up, yarn over, draw through 2, yarn over, draw through 2. So we've got 1, 2, 3. Then we'll do 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and our last one, 14. Okay, so those are the 14 double crochets in our first round complete. We're actually going to open up that loop now and let's count them together. So each little V here is 1 stitch. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Just hold that place. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and then our 14th stitch is the first one that we did, and it's marked by our stitch marker here. And we're actually going to take our second stitch marker and insert that underneath the last stitch that we've just done, so that we know when we reach the end of the round for our next round. Now the last thing left to do is to close up this magic circle. So first let's just pull on both of those loops to bunch those stitches up a bit more. And then you've got these 2 loops here in our magic circle. You want to pull one of them until the other one starts to close. So I've just pulled the wrong one there because it is pulling my tail shorter. Instead I'll go and get that second loop, and you can see that that other loop starts to disappear. So you can pull that one until the tail starts to move, and then you can pull that tail to close the circle. And the tail can be a little tough to pull at first, especially if you've moved it like I just did. So you can still see a little bit of the table through that, so I'm just going to pull that extra tight to get that as closed as we can. And you can trim this tail a little bit. You want to leave at least a small length that we can hide later. But if I find if the tail is too long, it's definitely going to bother me while I'm crocheting the rest of the coaster. So we now have the last stitch in the round marked by our pink stitch marker, and the first stitch that we did in the round marked with our blue stitch marker. And to actually finish this round, we're going to do a slip stitch into that first stitch to join the round together. So insert your crochet hook underneath both of the loops, the little V shape of that stitch, and then yarn over and pull it through. You now have 2 loops on your hook, and for a slip stitch you just pull that loop through the other one. And that is our slip stitch complete, and you can see that that's formed like a nice little circular shape. And now we're going to do the same thing we did with our magic circle at the start, and that is we're going to chain 2, so yarn over, draw through, yarn over, draw through, and that's to get us up the height that we need for the second row. Now the first stitch that we work into for the second row is this one that's still marked by our blue stitch marker. So I'm actually just going to take this out so that I can put my crochet hook in there and there's enough space for it. But you just want to take note of which stitch that is, because that is where our crochet hook is going to be going for our first double crochet of round 2. So we're going to yarn over, insert into that stitch we just removed the marker from, yarn over again. You've got 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, draw through 2, yarn over, draw through 2. And so we've just completed our first double crochet of round 2, and we're going to mark that stitch again with our blue stitch marker. So it's just this little V at the top. And that's going to help us find where we should slip stitch into when we reach the end of this round. And for each stitch in this round, we're actually going to do an increase. We're going to do a second double crochet straight into that same stitch. So we'll yarn over and insert through, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2 of those loops, and then yarn over and draw through those final 2. And you can see that those 2 double crochets are coming out of that same starting stitch. And so that's our first increase done. We're going to do an increase in every single stitch around the circle until we reach our final stitch marker, and that means that we will have added another 14 double crochets to our round. We'll have 28 stitches in total at the end. So for our first double crochet of our next stitch, we're going to go into the stitch that sits next to the one that we've worked into. So yarn over, insert underneath both of the loops of that stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2 loops, yarn over, draw through the final 2. That's the first double crochet of our increase, and then back into that same stitch to do the second double crochet of our increase. So that's 2 increases that we've done, and we've got 4 stitches in the round so far. So we'll just keep doing that all the way around. And then back into the same stitch. And then we've done 2 in 1, so we move on to the next stitch. And cotton yarn in particular can do this sort of splitting action because each thread of yarn is made up of a number of different plies. Sometimes the yarn will split like this, so just try and be careful and watch out for it. And if it does happen, you can usually, like for example, if I pulled through half of it and it does this sort of situation, you can usually take all of the stitches off your hook until you have that last one left, and then just pull it straight to tidy up that yarn and put it all back together again, and then just start the stitch again to avoid that. Not all yarns are going to do that, but cotton in particular, when it's made up of a number of different plies, can be a little finicky to work with. Okay, so we've just done our second last increase of the round, and the next stitch is the one that's marked by our stitch marker that tells us it's the last stitch from the last round. So this is actually the last increase that we have left to work before we've finished with the double crochets in the round. And the reason that we mark it is that you can see that it looks like there are actually 2 stitches left in the round. You've got this one here and then another one that looks, another little V that looks like it's a stitch here. This one here is actually the slip stitch that we completed to join the round together, and we don't work into that when we're working in joined rounds. So you can take that pink marker out now, and we'll work our last increase into that stitch. And then you can put that pink stitch marker back on the last stitch of this round, so that you know where it is for the next one. And then we just need to join the round to finish it. So again, we've got this blue stitch marker here. You can go underneath that one and do your slip stitch to finish round 2, and then your chain 2 to get us up to the height that we need for round 3. So we are ready to start round 3. It also starts with an increase the same way we did last time, so we're going to work 2 single crochets into that first stitch, which is the one that's marked by the blue stitch marker, and then we're going to do a double crochet in the second stitch, and we're going to repeat that pattern all the way around. So we'll do an increase, a double crochet, an increase, a double crochet, an increase, a double crochet, and so on and so forth until we reach the end of the round. So I'm going to take this blue stitch marker out. We'll do the first double crochet of that increase into that stitch that it was marking, and then on the first one we can replace that stitch marker so we know where to look next time. And then the second double crochet of that increase, and that's our first stitch, and then we're just going to do 1 double crochet in the next stitch, and that's the first instance of our repeat. And then the repeat will start again, so we'll do a double crochet increase in the next stitch, so 1, 2, back into that same stitch, and then we'll just do a single double crochet. That's confusing terminology. We'll just do 1 double crochet into the next stitch. So you can kind of see our pattern here. It's okay if it's hard to see because it can take some time to recognize the stitches. We've got 2 double crochets worked into the first one, 1 in the second, 2 into the third, 1 into the fourth, and we'll just repeat that pattern of 2, 1, 2, 1 all the way around until we reach our end of round marker. Okay, so we've just completed the increase of our repeat, and our very last stitch is going to be 1 double crochet. So I'm going to take that stitch marker out, and I'm actually going to leave it off for the next round, and we will see if we can identify the correct stitch together without using stitch markers. But while you're beginning, I recommend using as many stitch markers as you need, even if you want to put them at different intervals around the circle to help you keep count and help you keep track of what the last stitch you did was. You know, use as many stitch markers as you need. They are there to help you learn. So we have finished our last double crochet, and then we're just going to slip stitch into the first stitch of the round to complete round 3. And I'm going to remove that stitch marker as well. So we're doing hard mode now. So to start round 4, we're going to do the same 2 chain start to get us up to the right height. Basically each round we've started with 14 double crochets in the first round, and we added 14 double crochets because we did 14 increases in the second round. At the end of round 3 you should have 42 stitches, because on top of the 28 that we had in round 2, we added another 14 through our increases. So we're going to do the same thing again, add another 14 stitches in round 4, because adding the same number of stitches that we started with helps create this nice flat circle. And we'll block it at the end as well, which will help it actually sit flat too, but we can worry about that later. So the pattern repeat to get those additional 14 stitches in is our first stitch is going to be a double crochet, then we're going to do an increase, and then a double crochet, and then we'll repeat that 3 stitch repeat all the way around our circle. So it will be double crochet, increase, double crochet, increase, double crochet. And you'll notice that 2 double crochets are sitting right next to each other. You can also do an increase to start and then 2 double crochets, an increase, 2 double crochets if that's an easier pattern to remember. The reason that I split those stitches up is to help stagger the increases, and I have a whole video on the topic if you're interested in learning why we do that, but basically it's to help keep a rounder shape for our coaster. So you can learn more about that if you'd like to, but for now let's just get started. So we'll do a double crochet into that same stitch that we slip stitched into to finish the round. So we'll do 1 double crochet into that stitch, and then our next stitch is going to be an increase, so that's 2 double crochets worked into the same stitch, and then our third stitch is going to be just a double crochet. So that's our double crochet, increase, double crochet, and now we'll do double crochet, increase, double crochet, and we'll just keep repeating that circle all the way around until we are at the end. And your final stitch should be the final stitch of the repeat, so it will be the double crochet that happens after the increase. And then we're on our last repeat, so an increase. And then again we've removed our stitch markers this time, but you can see we've got the slip stitch from last round and then the actual last round of the stitch, and you can kind of see these slip stitches because they have this vertical bar. There it is, and there as well. That can be really tricky to spot though, so again use the stitch markers if you need to. And then our final single crochet for the round, and then we will join it to that first stitch from the last round, and you can see it because we know it was a double crochet. You can see the double crochet in that stitch, and it goes up to that V. Those sorts of recognizing the stitches becomes a lot easier once you've had a bit of practice. So this is the end of round 4 of our coaster. And the last thing left to do is we are going to be adding that little scalloped edge around the side, which means that we actually start this round a little differently than we've started the rest of them. So we've usually done 2 chains to get to the height of a double crochet for our next round, but the scalloped edge, which I have a finished coaster here, this scalloped edge has this little divot, and it's actually where we're going to be starting. So we're going to do 1 chain for round 5, and then that's the extent of the height that we need for this round, so we can get started after that. So we're going to be doing a single crochet now in this first stitch. So we've learned how to do a double crochet. A single crochet is half the height of a double crochet, hence the name. And it's a little bit simpler. So the first thing you do is you simply insert your crochet hook into that same stitch that we did the slip stitch in, the same way that we have for all the other rounds. You yarn over, pull through, you've got 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, and pull through both of those loops. So a double crochet has a lot more steps. A single crochet is nice and simple. In the next stitch we're going to work 3 double crochets. So similar to an increase where we work 2 double crochets in the same stitch, we're now going to work 3 double crochets into the same stitch. So start with the yarn over, insert, pull through, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, draw through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, draw through 2. So we've got the first double crochet that we've completed, and now we're going to do a second one back into that same stitch, and then a third double crochet into that same stitch. And you can see that we're kind of building up at an angle. Our single crochet gives us a little bump in height, our double crochets give us a bigger bump, and then for the next stitch we're going to work a single crochet into that one again. So I'll go through that slower. You insert your crochet hook into the next stitch without yarning over first. Then you yarn over and pull it through. You have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through both loops. So we started at a smaller height, went up and then went back down. And then for our next stitch, to go even closer to the edge, we're just going to do a slip stitch. So it starts the same way as a single crochet, insert straight in, draw through, but instead of yarning over at this point, you just draw it through. And I find it helpful to twist the yarn backwards at this point. I don't know why. It just seems to play nicer. So that is our first little scallop, and we're repeating that 4 stitch pattern all the way around. So it's a single crochet, 3 double crochets, a single crochet and a slip stitch. So let's do that again. We start with a single crochet, then we work 3 double crochets into the next stitch, then we work a single crochet into the next stitch, and then a slip stitch into the last stitch of the repeat. And there's 2 of our little scallops. So again, it's a 4 stitch repeat, a single crochet, 3 double crochets, a single crochet, and then a slip stitch. So single crochet, 3 double crochets, single crochet, and then a slip stitch. And just keep repeating that until we arrive at the end of the round again. Okay, I've just finished the slip stitch of the second last repeat, and I just want to make sure that there are 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches left until we reach the end of the round, and there are. And so that's how you know that you've repeated you've done the repeats correctly. I always recommend counting your stitches as often as you can to make sure that if there are any mistakes, you catch them quickly. So that's 3 double crochets in 1 stitch, single crochet, and then there is the final slip stitch. Whoops. The final slip stitch, and then you can cut your yarn. It doesn't have to be super long, just long enough so that we can hide the tail, and then you just pull your crochet hook out to pull that tail through, and then you can tighten it. There are 2 last little things that we have to do to finish this coaster. Number 1 is hide these 2 tails, the one that is left from when we finished the coaster and the one that's left from when we started. So to do that, you want to take the yarn needle that we prepared earlier, and you're going to thread that tail onto, see if I can get that on camera. You want to thread the tail onto that yarn needle, and the difference between a yarn needle and a regular needle is usually just that the eye of the needle is massive so that you can actually get the yarn onto it easily, and the tip of the nail is usually quite blunt. And that's so that it doesn't split the wool, or the cotton in this case, as easily. So to find the stitch that we are going to go into, so we have the straight bar here of the slip stitch that we did to join round 4, and then this one here is the single crochet that we did as part of our first scallop. So if you can find that one, and usually it's easy to find the one that has 3 double crochets coming out of it, because it's a lot denser and bulkier than the stitches behind it, because it's got those 3 stitches going into it. So you want the little V right next to those 3 double crochets, and then you want to see where they lead up to. So you're going to insert your yarn needle, almost like you would for a single crochet, underneath the V of that first single crochet that we did of the round. And then you just draw it through, and you can see here where the yarn is coming out. We actually want to go back into that same spot that it's coming out of, and it can be quite tight because we actually pulled it. So where the yarn is coming out here, you want to insert your needle back through that same stitch there, and you want to go down, so from the top down. So we are basically going to be creating the little V. So there's our V that we've just sewn in place. If you pull that tight, it just disappears into the rest of them. And then that edge has that same nice smooth center that the rest of the scallops do. So to then hide your tail underneath it, you want to take your yarn needle and kind of follow the pattern that the yarn and the stitches are already going in. So I like to just go underneath one of those loops there, then maybe turn it around. And we're aiming for, if you follow like this little thread, for example, and then go underneath, and there is a point here where you can see all of these little V's. You want to go underneath those, and you'll kind of feel it with the needle. There is sort of like a pocket of stitches that your needle can sit through. So if I just wiggle my way through that little pocket, so on this side here you can barely see the needle through those stitches, and if I flip it around you can barely see the needle on the other side as well, because it's sitting in between those layers of stitches, and that's a really good place to hide your tails. Then you can just pull it through, wiggle it around a little so it's sitting nice and naturally. That's a very technical term there. And then I usually go underneath one of these bar stitches on the back, and then I do the same thing in the next row, just going in underneath all of those V's, wherever it feels like the needle is happy to go. And this one doesn't seem very happy at all, does it? And this is another reason why you want a really blunt yarn needle, because it's not going to split all of those threads, it's just going to sit nicely in them. And I'm pretty happy with that. That's 2 passes under a few stitches. And then we'll do the same thing with the starting tails. So just thread that onto the needle. And then I usually take it underneath a few stitches of this first round from our starting point, like that, and then underneath one of these little bars, and then back in the opposite direction into the little sleevey kind of section. And because I cut my thread too short at the start, it's fallen off, but sometimes it's easier to place the needle and then thread it. And we'll pull that through. Give it a good little wiggle. And then I like to fold it over, pull it a little bit, and then just get as close as you can without actually cutting your coaster. And just trim the extra tail that we have. And that is your beautiful little scalloped coaster with all of the tails neatly hidden. And you'll notice that the scallops kind of like turn inwards a little bit, or at least they do for me. How much they do that is going to change depending on your tension, the material you used, etc. But we've got one last step before this coaster is finished, and it involves an iron. Okay, so the last thing that we have left to do is actually block our coasters so that they sit a little bit more flat. Got my little pile of coasters to block, and blocking is basically just ironing. I have my iron here, which is set to the 2-dot setting, and your yarn band will tell you what setting you want to have your iron set to. So this one here is the Drops Muskat label. When you open it up on the inside, it has all of the symbols that show you the care instructions. So this one here is the one that tells us we want our iron set to 2. If you have a synthetic fiber, for example, I have a band here for the Premier Parfait Chunky, which is a 100% polyester, it will have this little no ironing symbol because applying heat directly to a plastic product is generally a bad idea. In that case, you can still block the coasters, you can still make it of that kind of material and help it to sit flat, but what you want to do is use some kind of fabric in between. So this one here is just a cotton tea towel that I have that I've soaked in water, and then you just squeeze all of the water out and you can place it on top of your coaster. And then you'd want to have your iron set to a higher setting for this one, so probably over on the actual cotton or linen setting. And in that instance, when you press over it, all of the steam from the wet tea towel will heat the coaster and block it for you. So that's still one way that you can block your coaster for a synthetic fabric. But in this case, we should be able to iron just directly on it because we've got it set to the settings that are on the care label of our yarn. So it's pretty simple. Just lay the piece on. I've got the steam setting on because the steam is really going to help relax all of those stitches. And it doesn't take long, and you can already see the difference in how flat this coaster is sitting around those scallops compared to one that we haven't ironed yet. And I also like to flip it over and just give it a quick little go on the reverse side as well. And it really doesn't take long at all. And that's it, that's your last step. So your coaster is all finished now. And you can make as many colors as you want. I'm gonna iron the rest of these and have myself a cute little coaster set.